No, we're not. Okay. Well, now we're back. All right, Matt Coleman's here with the Logan Thompson Law Firm. Matt, good morning.
Good morning. You're waiting on the made-for-TV radio instead of the made-for-radio radio.
Exactly. Something like that. It's our weekly Logan Thompson Law segment. And, Matt, what do you have for us this week, buddy?
Well, I was thinking about just frustrations of people when they come in and see us and what some of the confusing issues are, and insurance really becomes one of the big ones. I debated bringing one of my friend insurance agents with me to chat about this, but, they oftentimes get on the sales side of it rather than the claims side of it. And so, I brought one of these declarations pages in with me, and the conversations often go something like this. It's like, what kind of insurance do you have? And, well, I've got full coverage. I'm adamant I got full coverage. Well, what does that mean? What does full coverage mean? Do you have uninsured motorists? Do you have collision? Do you have med pay? And then that's when that look in their eye comes back, and they just don't know. They don't know what their limits are. And so we spend a lot of time, we look at their deck pages. It doesn't necessarily help them on that day, but hopefully they make those changes. And because oftentimes in what I do with injury work, insurance coverage is really a first line of defense. So lengthy intro, but that's kind of what I want to chat with.
What do people not know that they should know?
Well, when they look at it, there's a couple of line items when you look at your deck page, and one of the first warnings for me is where people buy their insurance, and I find a trend. Folks that buy their insurance online, the General, Geico, some of those coverages that sell more online, you often find lower limit policies because they're looking on there, they're not reading the fine print, and they're simply saying, what is going to be the least expensive thing for me to get out on the road and be legal? And I find that folks that go into an agency, Farm Bureau, State Farm, some of these other local, George Gray, some of these other groups, they're getting counseled on what kind of insurance they need. And they're asking questions about what are your assets and what are your income and what is it going to take to cover you in the event of a loss. And so the insurance tends to be a lot more molded towards those specific folks. But even with both of those, when we look at these deck pages, it's a problem. And so the first line that is often seen is a portion that talks about liability. And that liability coverage protects you in the event that you cause a problem on the road. And there's typically two lines. There's a line for injury side and a line for damage side. But if you have minimum limits in Tennessee is $25,000 in coverage, if you have a $25,000 policy, you're not going to get very far, and you may not be very well protected. You'd be surprised how many folks come in after a single emergency room visit at our local hospital, and they've got a $40,000 bill. And that's in excess of what a lot of folks' coverages are. But liability protects you in the event that you are sued or someone files a claim because you may or are alleged to have done something wrong. You often see things like collision insurance. Collision insurance is something that pays for your vehicle in the event that there's some type of collision, but it doesn't really matter whose fault it is. And so, you may be in a wreck. It may not be your fault, but you want to get your vehicle fixed quick, you can go under your insurance, under the collision, and get your vehicle fixed quicker rather than waiting at the at-fault driver to do their side of it. And then your insurance company will subrogate or recover that money from the at-fault group. Comprehensive insurance, similar, it's property damage, but for things other than collisions. So things like theft, hail damage, burglary, things of that nature, vandalism. But the other big portion of the insurance I want to talk about is a thing called uninsured or underinsured motorist coverage. That, to me, is probably one of the most important parts of this, and it's definitely one for what I do. It is coverage that pays you as the policyholder in the event that the other party doesn't have enough insurance. So go back to that $25,000 limit, and you've got $40,000 in medical bills. If you have adequate uninsured motorist coverage, then your insurance will pick up the difference. They stand in the shoes of the at-fault folks, and they pay that. But when you look at that, you could buy $25,000. You can't have more uninsured motorist than liability. So you've got to increase those premiums. But if you're in that, $25,000 in insurance coverage, and you've got a uninsured motorist of $25,000, and the other driver is insured, you can't use your policy because we offset for whatever the other driver has. That's kind of a lengthy and probably got lost in the weeds there, but let me summarize it this way. People need more insurance. People need to get higher policies because medical bills are just skyrocketing right now, and the recovery on those are being so difficult.
I like we're talking about Matt Coleman, the Logan Thompson law firm, and I find a parallel when you talk about the online insurance companies, and I'm not thinking about some of these online attorneys, and some of these attorneys but when you talked about the local firms where you can go in, you can counsel, you can get advice. Same thing with Logan Thompson Law. Been here forever, trusted, can handle pretty much anything.
Yeah, and I probably sat down in the past 2 weeks with, 6 or 8 different folks, and it wasn't something we were going to take on. It wasn't something that they really needed assistance with. They may come back at a later time, but the doors are open there. The doors are open to sit down and say, look, give us a call on the front end, because when you're looking at your coverage, when you're looking at things like medical payments, when you're looking at which hospital or providers you might want to use, knowing what your options are on the front end makes it a lot easier for us on the back end to try to deal with things. And that's both within the injury realm and, with domestic relations and others. If you see some dark days coming down the road, whatever those may be, it is helpful to get in and talk with somebody about what your options are so that you can prepare for those days. And being the firm that we are, having the outreach that we do, we just want to make ourselves available to folks because this is our community too. And so when people are struggling, we're struggling. And so if we can help, we want to help.
That's true. Of course, you can go to the Logan Thompson Law Firm online, LoganThompsonLaw.com. Matt Coleman. Matt, thank you so much. That was great.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. All right, we're going to take a quick time out here.